everybody, John Sarver here, CKiW iRADIO 76, along with the Manager General of the SEMA Garage Detroit, Ben Kaminsky. Hiya, Ben.
Hi, John.
An interesting place. There's two of these things in the whole wide world. One is in Diamond Bar, California.
That's right.
And now there's one in Detroit, the SEMA Garage Detroit, obviously. Now, the reason why SEMA decided to go Midwest is what?
So the Diamond Bar facility obviously serves our West Coast customers really well, and has actually served the lower 48 well for the past 8 years. But in order to help our members have greater access to and easier access to a new development facility, it made sense to come to the more toward the East Coast. And what better place to come when you're talking about automotive things
Than Plymouth, Michigan.
right outside Michigan, Detroit, right?
Not Ford, Michigan. Yes, very well done. Yeah, so now we have everybody, because there's so many part suppliers here, obviously, in this region. I mean, it's got to be a ton. So now this building wasn't a SEMA building before. It was...
Yeah, actually it was a Toyota development center before we built it out for our purposes. So Toyota was one of the OEs right in the Detroit area, along with many others. By the way, there's 25 development centers or OE headquarters in the Detroit area, right? So whether that's a proving grounds or whether it's a development center or whether it's a Toyota development center like it was here, we have, believe it or not, 80 automotive suppliers within a 3-mile radius of this building right here, which is crazy.
Wow.
And you mentioned also, our SEMA membership. We actually have 75 SEMA members within a 50-mile radius of this facility. So, very centrally located. There's a lot of SEMA, obviously, membership and manufacturers that are in the area. There's a lot of automotive. Obviously Detroit's the hotbed for everything automotive.
And we should say, when you say 75 members, you mean corporate members, big members.
Correct. 75 member manufacturers. Right. Yes.
Now, what we want to do is touch on, too, is that anybody can become a member of SEMA Garage Detroit, correct?
Yeah, so that basically with your SEMA membership, you pay your annual dues, and part of that access, both, by the way, on the SEMA side and the PRI side, is that you actually have access to the SEMA Garage. So both on the West Coast and here in Detroit.
So I can't, if I'm let's go, there's a couple different levels of membership.
There are, yeah. So this is aimed at the SEMA member manufacturer, which is a different thing than the SEMA individual membership. So the SEMA individual membership has its own set of benefits, but the SEMA manufacturer members, that's a different level of membership, and that also allows access to the SEMA Garage.
Right, so now if I'm I guess what we're going to call it, corporate member, upper level member, you can utilize everything in here, right? You can just sign out a time and say, look, I need number 11 or number 12 or something?
Yeah, so we try to keep as many of the services here in the garage and as much of the access to the facilities we can as part of the membership dues. There are some services in addition that actually we do charge for in and above the SEMA membership. For example, our emissions program, for that testing, it's quite expensive to do that, but we actually try to do it very cost effectively for our membership. So it's one of the services that would be an additional fee.
All right, yeah, but still, that you can come in here if you need. Well, you know what? Let's go over there and we'll take a look at some of these different individual, what do they call them? Not garages? Garages inside of a garage? Cells? Something?
Yeah.
Whatever. Okay. So this is, obviously, this place we just opened up, or you just opened up, when?
That's right. So we had our grand opening in August. And that we had roughly 700 people at our grand opening, which was really exciting, and it was a great mix of our SEMA member manufacturers, SEMA individual members. We also had a lot of the OEs and OE suppliers that attended our grand opening.
Like?
General Motors brought vehicles here, Ford brought vehicles here, Stellantis brought vehicles, Nissan. So very good support from the OEs. We also had the parking lot was filled with our SEMA member manufacturers products. Black Lake Research and Development was here with their off-road truck, and there were tons of other ones. Arrington Performance was here with a supercharged pickup truck that runs on hydrogen, right? And we had electric vehicles here, we had hot rods, we had resto mods, we had...
You know what's interesting is at one time you said, that, I think it's GM that said whatever car that you want from their archives, you know.
Yeah, the OEs were very generous. The OEs are excited that we're here. They're looking forward to working with us more in Detroit. So yeah, and General Motors was one of the ones that came forward, along with, like I said, Ford and Stellantis, that were very generous to bring you know, some really cool cars, some SEMA builds, some things from the past to come to the garage for the grand opening.
Now, first of all, what we need to do is tap on the door. We need a 70 Superbird here. All numbers match. Tell me, please.
Amen to that.
Yeah. But before we go over there and stuff, upstairs, now that is a meeting area that you can see right over here, and that you can do.
Yeah, that's right. So that's our training room, and SEMA is very big in education. So part of what we like to help do is educate our membership, to help them be able to develop products better, help them understand the technologies, especially now with the complex technologies that we're dealing with in the automotive industry, is help them understand that technology and understand how their products can interface with that. So the training room is a critical portion of that. So it seats up to about 100 people. It's got full video conference capability and sound. So if folks want to come in and do a product reveal, they can do that. If they want to do a training, they can do that. And then if they want to come down here into the soak room where we're standing, you know, and actually do some you know, emissions testing, this is kind of the first step for that. Or if they want to use our installation facility to do installation manuals or influencer videos, whatever they want. The training room, you mentioned part of the free services, right? Part of the membership. That would be one of those free services that we offer, is that they can use that rather than having to rent a hotel room or rent a conference center or whatever somewhere around the area.
And there's also like a kitchen up there too, in case
there
you
is.
get hungry.
Yeah, you get hungry or you need some coffee about 2 in the afternoon, you know.
2? Yeah. Oh, it's so late. Anyways, you're going to see a couple of vehicles as we walk over here right now. But in order to get some of these cars in here, whether they drive in their own power or not, tell us, Ben, about this little guy.
Yeah, so this is a Stringo vehicle mover, and this was something that Stringo partnered with us on. We're very excited to have it in our facility. And really the important part is, not only does it look cool, it actually is very functional. And the thing that it does is it actually allows us to move vehicles in the facility around without actually starting the vehicle. And for ICE vehicles, that's very important, because when we do our emissions testing, running a vehicle in our soak room can impact the background and can actually influence the emissions results. The equipment is so sensitive that if the air around the cell is at all contaminated with exhaust gas, it can actually influence that reading. So this is a critical part of us being able to move the vehicles around in the facility without starting them. And this is such a slick piece of equipment. I'm thinking when it gets a little warmer, I'm going to commute on this back and forth to work.
Yeah, okay. You can have a couple of friends?
That's right.
Good, yeah. Someone's got to drive, however. But talking about driving, come on over here to number 7. Now, all these bays are numbered, obviously, and they all have, this is, in a dream, if you're a wrench head, this is where how you would set up your garage.
It is.
I mean, big time.
It is.
I mean, this almost looks like if you're hip to a movie called The Lively Set with James Darren. But however, it was sponsored. It was a movie that was supposed to feature the Chrysler turbine, but they didn't have the Chrysler turbine ready for the posters and stuff yet. And so they drew this mock-up of what this thing was supposed to be, and it looked nothing like the turbine. But the big picture was that his dad was rich, you know, but he didn't tell anybody in high school. But when you went to his dad's place, it looked like this, and everybody was like, wow, you're my best friend. Look, your dad has all these wonderful tools and stuff. Talking about wonderful tools, tell us about number 7 here.
Yeah, this is our emissions test cell, and this is an awesome piece of equipment. This is one of the crown jewels of the SEMA Garage Detroit, actually, John. We have a vehicle in here right now, obviously a Ford F-150 running on the dyno. We were doing some emissions testing earlier to kind of commission our equipment. We're working on putting the final touches on this cell before we actually are able to get our members in and do the emissions testing and then apply for a CARB certification that they'll recognize the results. This particular screen over here is actually a driver trace. So the way that we do the emissions testing is the CARB and the EPA have prescribed a certain drive trace that we need to follow. So essentially it's basically just says what speed we need to drive, and then it's kind of like playing a video game a little bit where you try to put the cursor on the line. And it's actually can be kind of challenging, but there's a certain portion of testing that we do where we do a city, a highway, and then what they call a US 06 test, which is a little more severe acceleration and such. But the idea is that then we check the emissions tests, the emissions tailpipe results against the regulations and make sure that we're passing with the member manufacturer's product on the vehicle. It could be an air intake, it could be an exhaust, it could be a supercharger kit, it could be a cam and lifter kit. So any of those things we've had come through the lab in California, and now we're going to have very shortly here in January in Detroit.
I was going to say, but we want to make sure that just because it's a tailpipe thing, that EVs also can be tested here.
Great point. So one of the things that we wanted to do is try to kind of future-proof the equipment that we put in the facility, right? So we worked with AVL, a very well-known and renowned company that does not only emissions dynos, but the emissions equipment to measure the tailpipe. But also baked into this, is the EV range testing. So we have both chargers here in the facility that will charge the vehicle up, that you have to measure kind of the power into the battery pack, and then we put it on the dyno and run another prescribed drive trace and actually measure the power out of the pack to a certain level of battery charge, and that is then what gets submitted and then for an actual affirmed range number.
So when Bob's EV startup comes in here, Bob's doing all kinds of things.
Yeah, that Bob, he's an innovator.
He's busy. If he builds Bob's EV and he brings it in here and he says, look, I don't know how many miles I can get. I mean, he can come into here and then say, look, folks, I'm looking for a mileage test. And you can do that?
That's right.
Okay. So it's just not one-stop shopping. It's just not ICE engine, it's EV. You got everybody covered.
Yeah, exactly. And we're looking to the future. We're even, talking about all sorts of internal combustion engines, right? No matter what the fuel is, we can do that here.
Cool. I know.
Diesel, gasoline, hydrogen.
I was going to say, EPA likes you guys, right?
Yeah,
for this place right here?
We have a very good working relationship with the EPA and CARB, and the reason is, we're not just hot rodders that want to just go out and the heck with the environment, right? We want to play by the rules. We want to be good citizens. We want to make sure that the environment is protected, but we also want to continue to do our hobby. We want to continue to have the things in our market that we have traditionally had. But we're trying to provide pathways to do that. One of them is obviously the emissions program, right? Mm-hmm. And the work that we do with our Washington, D.C. office to make sure that the legislation that we have is fair and reasonable, so that our industry just doesn't get written out in pen in legislation in Washington. So that's another part of the SEMA organization as a whole. It's a very important part of the emissions program.
We've talked about this before. So if Bob brings in something and he doesn't know how to get this thing past EPA or through EPA, Bob can come in here and say, look, I'm Bob's EV, I'm Bob's ICE engine, can you help me?
Yeah, and that's a great part. That's a great point. So part of the program that we have is not, we just don't, you have to bring the vehicle in and do the prep cycle yourself and understand all of the paperwork that goes with it. We actually are more of a soup to nuts sort of program. If you don't know anything about emissions, but you have a product that you want to sell, you can come to us and we'll help coach you through the process. We'll submit the paperwork for you to the CARB and EPA. We make sure the paperwork is written correctly. We make sure that it doesn't have any errors in it. And then we work with CARB and the EPA to actually track them and make sure that they're moving through the system. So the eventual idea is that the person gets either a SEMA certified, which means that you can sell in 49 states outside of California, mm-hmm. and also then a CARB-EO, which means that you can sell into the California market as well. So that's the eventual goal, and at SEMA we have employees that help do that, project managers that do exactly that, make sure that we write the paperwork correctly, make sure that we document it correctly, make sure it's submitted in the correct way, and then eventually is moving forward to get that paperwork and the CARB CARB is California Air Resources Board.
Yes, right,
EO is an executive order that basically says, yes, this is kind of the Hippocratic oath for the for the aftermarket industry, that we're not doing any harm, right? That the emissions of the vehicle are spot on what they need to be.
Amazing. So it's kind of like you're the H&R Block of, you just come in, bring your stuff in, we'll do all the paperwork, we'll fill it in and help you out. Talking about helping you out, let's go next door. I'm telling you, there's so many different places here. You just want to go from cell to cell, because every cell here has a great story.
It does. Yeah, and it's very purposely chosen. You know, the programs that we have and the reasons that we have the equipment in the facility that we have are really to help the member. You know, we're all about helping the member and helping them develop product. And that's really the goal of the facility, and that's why it was built the way it was built. It's
incredible. The more and more you know about SEMA Garage Detroit, the more and more what a bargain. Seriously, what a bargain. I mean, I know it starts at $100 for, you know, the folks that are not GM, you know, but even then so. Look at everything you get. You get something like this. All right, so now we got 4 bumps on the floor.
Yeah.
That I know that we're not going to walk on top of, because technicians have a nasty way of turning on the machine when broadcasters stand up on top. It's funny for YouTube, however.
Well, we can do the log roll run later, John, and see if we can beat the current
like
record.
Canadians?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so we have a huge fan right there. We got folks that are in a cage over there. And let us say that there are technicians behind that wall there. There's a whole control group that's running all this stuff. It's just not, you put in a couple of quarters and things work, and then after the 3 minutes it stops. What does this do?
So this is a chassis dyno, and our primary use, everybody knows, or most folks know what a chassis dyno does, but essentially it's a rolling road. It's a way to test vehicles indoors, so you can control the environment and the tests that you're running and the loads that you're putting on the vehicle. So for us, our primary use case for this, John, is really going to be the prep to go into the emissions test cell that we just came out of. So there's two parts really to the emissions testing. So one of them is that we have to submit is actually an OBD2 scan, or a scan of the engine control units and the surrounding modules, and it's kind of a health check that says, hey, my vehicle is in good working condition, I've got no faults, I'm ready to go in and do the emissions testing. So this is the one way that we use this, and we bring the vehicle in and we run the vehicle until it sets, checks, and passes all of those functionality checks for the vehicle. Then we know that we can go in and we can submit that health check confidently and say, yes, the vehicle is in good working condition, and now we can go in and use the emissions test cell and then submit the tailpipe results. The other thing that we do here as well, in addition, and this is something that most folks are more familiar with on a chassis dyno like this, is power measurement, right? The historic power measurement.
Right.
So another thing that we have to submit is if our SEMA members have manufactured a product and they're claiming a horsepower increase, for example, on a supercharger kit, they're claiming 50 horsepower, we also have to submit paperwork that shows that it does indeed make the 50 horsepower that we claim. So that would be part of this as well.
Fudging, in other words, SEMA will find you.
Yeah. Well, and to me, that's part of, if you're looking for an aftermarket company to purchase a product for, right, and you see the SEMA logo, right, on their page, or you see that they're a SEMA member, these are part of the things that those SEMA members do, the extra steps that they take to develop products to make sure that they're making the 50 horsepower, or to make sure that they're emissions compliant, to make sure that when you actually put the product on your vehicle that you're going to get what you paid for and get what you expected out of those products.
Yeah, as opposed to people go, oh sure, it's a 7,500 more horsepower. And believe me, there's been so many different times where people have these wonder fixes and this cheap, easy, fast horsepower. You know, what SEMA Garage does is get rid of the snake oil. You know, so if it says SEMA, it's already gone through all this testing, you know. And take a look at Ben's face, with that face lie to you. No, you know, so every time you see a SEMA thing, think of Ben. Think of Ben. Let's go next door, because you're right, these two things, these two base cells work together. Now, here's something that they didn't have to have two individual cells. This is probably what the biggest cell, biggest opening that you have here. This is the fabled 9 and 10. Now, what 9 and 10 does, this is, I think, where some folks are more familiar with. They may have a hoist like this if you have M1. Some people do have these things in the garage, but the unique thing about all of this is you have one, and we'll swing around here too, but there is so many different hoists that you have here.
Yeah, in fact, so standing right here, John, is where they actually did the SEMA Businesswomen's Network Bronco build for the SEMA show. So
right here.
Yeah, right here. So that was exciting. We had 20 to 30 different very talented women in the industry come in and work on the Bronco and build it out for the SEMA show. So they did suspension modifications, they did a vehicle wrap, they did all sorts of things to outfit it, for camping and that sort of thing. So it was a really cool build, and it was really cool to have that energy in the facility kind of right out of the gate as we got started with the SEMA Garage in Detroit. It was a neat way to kick it off.
Now we should probably say that the women's group, SEMA Women, as I get all choked up, pardon me, they come here not regularly, a few months,
Yeah, that's another, so our councils are part of SEMA. So SEMA Businesswomen's Network is one of our councils. So we actually have a network of councils. So if you're looking for networking opportunities in the industry, meeting your compatriots in the industry, you're looking for other folks who are like-minded, we have the Wheel and Tire Council. So if you're doing wheel and tire development, it's people from across the industry that are coming together and say, okay, so what are the challenges that we're facing next? And let's face those together, and then we'll sort out the commercial aspect and the competitiveness on the side, right? But let's come together as an industry and grow the pie bigger for everyone rather than just slice the pieces thinner.
Is there somewhere where it's posted, where all these groups are and when they meet here and stuff like that?
So SEMA.org has a lot of that information. We also have our director of SEMA councils and that put together those groups. There's a bunch of different councils, so if you want more information on that, you can search on SEMA.org and that'll come up, and you can get involved, you can understand when they're meeting next, you can get a lot of the information as to what the councils are doing and when they're doing it.
So in order to be in a council meeting or just show up and grab a chair, you have to be a member of SEMA?
That's right.
Okay. And it's really, and even if you're just coming in to get that networking alone, that's worth tons.
Yeah, it's huge. In fact, I think there are people who just look for that aspect of it to see, to be on a council, to interface and network with a lot of folks in the industry and understand what's really coming next for that portion of it, or do training or work on training that actually educates the SEMA membership, or have activities and events at the SEMA Garage or the SEMA Garage in Detroit or the SEMA Garage in Diamond Bar, or understand what might be something that our legislative team needs to look into, right? And say, okay, is this something that the SEMA member needs to adhere to, or how do we actually work with the legislative body to make sure that we're writing the rules in a way that allows us to continue to do our industry?
Yeah, and let's talk about that briefly, that there is all kinds of different stuff that's going on legislative. Why? This isn't just trying to figure out how to do, how to build things, how to do things. And so there is a part, if you're a part of that, SEMA is actively involved in Washington.
Yeah, absolutely. We have an office in Washington, we have a legal staff in Washington, and we have lobbyists that actually go out and work with the legislative body to make sure the rules are written correctly.
Cool. Talking about written correctly, here comes a fun part that we like to see over here. Now, on this side of the road, we have some fine Miller equipment here. One of my favorite for welding, none better in our estimation.
Yeah, so one of the cool things about our industry, again, talking about coming together, is there are a lot of different equipment suppliers that came in and said, hey, we want to be part of the SEMA Garage. We want to be partnered with you. We want to get our product to you so that you can use it and better serve your members. And the Miller is one of the ones that stepped up and did that, right?
And so the folks behind you?
And the folks behind us, yes, the BenPack lifts that we just passed, another excellent example of that, and we're excited to have them here, right? And all for member use. It's a really neat facility. this is over 6,000 square feet of garage space, right? This is my ultimate garage. I'd love to put a cot over there and just, work on my cars and stuff. But this is a really cool part, and actually one of my favorite parts of the facility for sure.
Well, you want to see something that's really cool? Come on over to this side. This is pretty interesting. We need you to talk about this. We saw this at PRI, we saw a demonstration, but tell us what this does, Ben.
Yeah, so I think to take one step back, our tech transfer program is a big part of what the SEMA Garage does, and tech transfer is really getting the CAD files from the OEMs and putting it in a database so that our SEMA membership via the tech transfer program can access that.
Right.
That's designing from nominal CAD data that the manufacturer uses to manufacture parts. So that's kind of the holy grail of CAD files that you can get when you're designing things. If we don't have access to those files, or there's something that we need in addition to the files that we already have in the database, we do what's called 3D scanning. And this piece of equipment is the top of the line 3D scanner. I affectionately call it the buckyball. So if you're familiar, getting a little nerdy, the Buckminster Fullerene, check it out. It's from way back in chemistry. But actually this uses scanning to actually go in and actually scan and uses lasers to see objects. And so basically you scan it, it looks like you're painting, and actually you go in and you kind of paint the object, and then it actually measures it with all these little sensors and things on here. So, and it actually interfaces with this tower here as well to be able to do those measurements. And it actually is unbelievably accurate, down to 25 microns, which is about quarter the width of a human hair. So it's incredibly accurate as well. And it goes pretty fast. So we could probably scan an entire vehicle in about 4 to 5 hours.
4 to 5 hours.
That's right.
Now, do you do that? Do the members come in and use it and they can scan it? Who operates this?
So our development engineer actually is the one who would be using our scanner. It is obviously, as you can imagine, a very expensive piece of equipment.
Don't drop it.
Exactly. So we just want to make sure that, and it actually does take, you kind of have to hold your tongue right, let's say, to make sure that it's working properly. And there are ways that you tweak it for the different, if you have something that is black in color, you use a different setting on the lasers than if you have something that's very reflective like a silver or a white. So there are a lot of idiosyncrasies to use it and make sure that the scan is coming out correctly.
Now this does what?
So this actually kind of talks to that.
Okay.
And it really understands where this is in space, and together they work together to really get the measurement, and that's the reason for the accuracy.
Now the whole thing with this one is, if you did say a 62 Falcon, and you did the whole 9 yards, if I'm a member, I can get access to that file, right? Even if I was never here, if I live in Missouri.
Yep. You know, that's a great point, John. In fact, we had one company that came to us at the SEMA show and said, hey, we're from Australia and we design parts for your market all the time that we've never seen, based on the tech transfer program that we can get CAD data out of and know that we're designing those parts that will work in your market.
Wow. I mean, it's kind of like I don't know, like a big library that people can have access to. You know, we're not pushing memberships or anything, but we're saying that if you had that, I mean, if you try to do this, if you're Bob's EV and you need to have your EV traced, it's going to cost you more than $100.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talk about cost more than $100. Look at this fine Hunter setup.
Yeah, we're excited about this. So this is kind of leads into the next area that we'll go to, John.
Sure.
Our ADAS Technology Center. But this really, so kind of step one is doing the alignment, vehicle alignment, right? And if we're doing lift kits and lowering kits and things like that as well with the members that come in and install that things, you know, step one is basically making sure that we have a proper alignment on the vehicle. So we don't have a proper alignment, especially the vehicles with a lot of the ADAS systems, which ADAS is Advanced Driver Assistance Systems. So things like 360 surround view, automatic emergency braking, lane keep assist, all of those things that kind of come up on the middle screen in your car and yell at you, you know, when it perceives you doing something wrong.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that those are still functioning correctly when we make the changes to the vehicle that we want and the modifications to the vehicle that we want. So making sure that for example, the forward-facing camera is pointing in the same direction that the vehicle is traveling is really step one. That's kind of ground zero for that.
Wow. And so you can do that. Now, there's kind of a fun thing over here. It's, yes, you have a refrigerator over here, and yes, this is where you can have your ginger ales and stuff. But look at this F370 that we saw spied against the wall. All right. It's not a refrigerator, it's not a TV. What does this big guy do? Yeah,
this is a really cool piece from Stratasys. So Stratasys is another partner that came in and said, hey, we want to be a part of the SEMA Garage. So They actually gave us this piece of equipment and let us use it, basically, right, for the membership, which is awesome, because then basically what we do.
You said for membership, so it's just not you and the few techs around here. Any member can use this.
That's right. Yep.
Wow.
And we have another unit from Stratus that's actually in California, and depending on what material we need to use and the bed size that we're looking for to be able to print the part and the accuracy of the part that we're trying to print, we can print at either of those stations from anywhere in the country. So basically, we just get the file in, and then we make sure that it's correct and make sure the changes are made to be able to print it. And then we can actually go in and print those. So if we needed to use the California printer, we could print that from Detroit. If the California folks needed to, it's basically network based, right?
Right, yeah.
So, but all we really charge for is the use of the material. So really, it's just a material cost. So we basically have a very low cost for 3D printing. And that's part of the beauty of partnerships, right? With folks like Stratus, is that it really benefits the members in a financial way, for sure.
So if I'm a member and we just use that 3D printer to do, let's say, a cam, then I can come over here for the cost of the plastic and have the part made for me.
That's right.
For my membership.
Yeah, exactly right.
Whew. All right, talk about exactly right. You want to see some Star Wars-y thing? Come follow us over at this place. This is one of the things that separates, I shan't say separates SEMA from everybody else, but this is one of those things that you have and not too many other people have.
Yeah, so this is our ADAS Technology Center. So this is the room that we're going to go into now, is really the room that mimics what the OEs do at the end of line tests. So there aren't many of these out there in the industry, for sure, and none that we're aware of that really is focused on helping the aftermarket and develop products. So this one is actually an end-of-line test unit that really, it's actually the end-of-line unit that
end-of-line
that the Ford, coming out of the vehicle manufacturing plant.
Oh, okay.
At the end of line, meaning you manufacture a pickup truck, and the pickup truck needs to have its ADAS calibration completed before it actually goes out to the dealership. This is a very similar unit to that. So, and the difference to a lot of the aftermarket units that we'll see later is that this actually centers the vehicle to the target versus centering the target to the vehicle, and you'll see that in a little bit.
Wow.
But this station over here actually is what runs that test. So this vehicle that we have on here, you drive it on, and then it actually measures with lasers and actually centers the vehicle, and that's what the rollers are for there on the floor, is to actually, it'll push it and center the vehicle to the target up there, to the gantry.
Okay, now finally, these two cells, the cell that we have right now and the cell that we have over here, these two kind of work hand in hand, don't they?
They do, yeah. This is kind of the forward thinking that we're trying to do, is to really help the aftermarket industry not only understand what happens at the end of line, and really being able to take all the variables out of the equation as far as alignment to the targets and things like that, to make sure that we're doing the ADAS alignment correctly. And then this is the part of the facility that we actually help coach the industry on how do you do the ADAS calibrations in the aftermarket. Not everyone's going to have that really nice piece of equipment, the alignment machine that we have next door, but these are common in the industry when you're doing things like, for example, collision repair. Let's say that you have a vehicle that you bump someone, or someone bumps you, and now all of a sudden you have to go for vehicle repair. Well, if your camera has moved, or if they remove the grill on your car, and they put it all back, it may look great, but you still need to go in and make sure that the camera is actually aligned to where it thinks it is. And I'll use the example of sighting in a rifle. If you're looking way down range at 300 yards and you're a millimeter off with your muzzle, that can almost completely miss the target, right?
Right.
But if you actually do the let's call it the sighting in, or the calibration on the ADAS equipment where your camera is looking, then when it's looking further out, when it's looking 200 to 300 to 500 yards out, it can understand where the lane lines are. It can understand where, if there's a car that's stopped in a lane that you're coming up on rapidly, it can understand that that's in my path and I need to do something about it.
Wow. Okay. So now over here on this wall, we have, briefly,
Yeah, so John, this is where if you look at that, you relax your eyes and you'll actually see a dog of it. No, I'm kidding. So these are the different targets that are actually, there's no standardization in the industry right now as far as how to do the ADAS calibration or the targets that are required.
Right.
So these look like some of my second grade art projects, but they're, I was a very linear thinker, John.
Nice. Yeah.
So, but these actually are all the targets that are needed to do the ADAS calibrations for the aftermarket industry. So whether you have a Ford, a Chevrolet, a Chrysler, an Audi, whatever vehicle that you have, there's different targets and different mixtures of targets and different ways to interface with the vehicle to do a proper ADAS calibration.
It's amazing. I mean, really, of everything that we have seen here today, and this is scratching the surface. This is just getting started here in Detroit. You know, I mean, are they thinking about expanding this once it gets going? I mean, is there going to be, they're going to make a roof version of the show? I mean, are they going to have a car wash here?
Yeah, I mean, I think the sky's the limit at this point, John. You know, I mean, obviously we're in the business to help our membership, and then the membership goes to the SEMA show, right? And then they display the new products that we help develop. So it's kind of it's an exciting work together kind of strategy to go do that. And yeah, I hope eventually there might be a SEMA Garage Dallas or a SEMA Garage Orlando or a SEMA Garage John Sarver edition. You know,
no, that's for the SEMA show in Detroit.
So, but really to help the membership, really that's what we're looking to do. You know, and we want to make sure that we're good stewards of the money that the membership has afforded us in a place like this. And we're hoping it takes off and we're able to help the membership up above and beyond what we've even done before.
And that's all because of here. So thank you very much, Ben. I appreciate that greatly.
Always good to see you, John.
I'm telling you, stay tuned to CKiW iRADIO 76, the only station that gives a damn about the greatest sport on earth, and that's drag racing. We are going to be here at SEMA twice a month, if not more. God bless, I got great bourbon. Anyways, for Ben Kaminsky and myself, John Sarver, thank you so very much for being here at the SEMA Garage Detroit.